A millionaire left a $0 tip, but the single mother waitress found a secret note. In 30 years of serving tables, I've never seen a man so rich humiliate a woman so poor, with such coldness, and all for a folded piece of paper. Those were the words of Rose, the oldest cook at the Maple Leaf Diner. On the afternoon, everything changed. But to understand why a millionaire was capable of writing zeros on the tip line and leaving a single word that would break a single mother's heart, one must start at the beginning. One must know Lily. Lily Morrison was 28 years old, though the exhaustion in her green eyes added 10. Her brown hair was pulled back in a messy bun that came undone halfway through her shift, and her light blue uniform with white trim had already been patched 3 times at the elbows. By 5 a.m., she was already on her feet. By 6, she was dropping her son Max off at Mrs. Dubois' house, the neighbor who cared for him in exchange for a few dollars, and the food scraps Lily managed to save at the end of her shift. By 6:30, she was crossing the diner's threshold, tying her apron, and beginning a day that wouldn't end until past midnight. The Maple Leaf Diner was one of those classic highway spots. Large windows that let in the sun, worn red leather booths, a black and white checkered floor, and a chrome counter that Lily polished every morning until she could see her reflection. It smelled of freshly brewed coffee, bacon, and toast. For many, it was just a stopover. For Lily, it was the only wall separating her from the street. That Thursday morning, she had accepted, as almost always, a double shift. Not because she wanted to, but because the hospital bills were still unpaid, and because Max, her 6-year-old boy, had woken up with a fever again. He was coughing all night again. Mrs. Dubois had told her when she dropped him off. "Lily, that boy needs a real doctor, not just over-the-counter syrup." "I know," she had replied, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I get paid this week. I'll take him this week, I promise." It was the same promise she made every week, and every week something got in the way. Rent, electricity, new shoes for the boy, the old debt that grew like a shadow. Max had been born with a chest condition. Doctors spoke of a specialist treatment in the city, of tests that cost more than Lily earned in 3 months. And the boy's father, well, the boy's father had left before Max learned to say Dad. One night he was there, the next morning he wasn't. And with him went the few certainties Lily had about the future. Since then, she was alone, truly alone, with no family to support her, no savings, no other safety net than her own exhausted body and her intact pride. Because that she had. Pride. Not the arrogant pride of one who thinks they are better than others, but the silent pride of one who, even with everything against them, never stopped smiling at a customer, never served a dish without wishing them a good meal, never allowed her misery to seep into her work. "Good morning, can I take your order?" she would say with a warmth that wasn't faked, because Lily, despite everything, liked people. That afternoon, the diner was quiet, lunch was over, and dinner was still a while away. Lily was taking advantage of the lull to refill napkin holders when the door chime rang. A man entered. He wasn't just any customer. She knew it immediately, as all waitresses in the world know the moment a stranger crosses the threshold. He wore a custom-tailored black suit, the kind that costs more than a car, with an open-collared white shirt, no tie, like someone who doesn't need to prove anything because he already has everything. He walked unhurriedly, with a cold, almost distant confidence. He must have been in his late 30s, with a sharp face, a tense jaw, the look of someone who had long since stopped expecting good things from others. He sat in the back booth by the window, where the afternoon sun fell directly. Lily approached with the menu and her usual smile. "Good afternoon. Welcome to the Maple Leaf Diner. Can I get you something to drink while you decide?" The man didn't even look at her. His eyes were fixed on his phone. Coffee, black, and water, right away. Lily wasn't offended. She was used to it. She had learned long ago that behind a customer's coldness, there was almost always something else. A bad day, a sorrow, an invisible burden. So she returned with the steaming coffee and glass of water and placed them gently. "When you're ready to order, I'll be here." The man finally looked up, and for a second, just 1 second, something in his eyes seemed to pause as they met hers. Lily had those kinds of unforgettable green eyes, deep, clear, too sad for such a young woman. But the man quickly looked away as if reproaching himself for being distracted. "What do you recommend?" he asked in a tone that sounded more like an interrogation than a question. "The meat pie is freshly made, and today's soup is vegetable, very comforting. If you ask me, on an afternoon like this, I'd go for the soup and a good coffee." I didn't ask what you would do. The comment was dry, sharp. Anyone else would have shrunk. Lily just broadened her smile slightly. "You're right. My apologies. I'll give you a minute." And she retreated without losing her composure. From the kitchen, Rose had seen everything. "That guy's looking for trouble," she murmured. "Be careful with him, honey. He's just a tired man, Rose, like everyone else. Tired men don't wear $10,000 watches." Lily smiled and went back to her work. The man finally ordered the soup and the meat pie. He ate in silence, barely looking at his plate, typing on his phone, taking calls in a low voice with words like, "Contract, no percentage, I won't accept less." Lily came and went, refilled his water, cleared empty dishes, asked if everything was to his liking, always with the same kindness. And the man always responded with monosyllables or silence. There was a moment, however, when something strange happened. Max. Lily received a message from Mrs. Dubois. "Max has a high fever again. What should I do?" And for a fraction of a second, as she read it behind the counter, Lily's face broke, just for an instant. She pressed the phone to her chest, closed her eyes, took a deep breath, then typed, "Cool cloths. I'll be out as soon as I can. Hang in there, my love." And she put the phone away again, putting on her smile like one puts on a mask. The man in the black suit saw it, saw everything, the tremor, the held breath, the forced smile afterwards, and for the first time all afternoon, he put his phone down on the table and truly observed her. When he finished eating, he asked for the bill. Lily brought it on the usual small tray with a mint candy on the side, as she did for everyone. "It was a pleasure serving you. Have a good afternoon." The man took out his wallet, paid in crisp new bills, then took the receipt and with a silver pen wrote something on the tip line. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and before leaving, placed the receipt face down on the table. He walked towards the door without saying goodbye. The chime rang, and he was gone. Lily cleared the table and then saw the receipt. On the line where customers write the tip, in elegant, firm handwriting, the man had written 00 and below it, a single word, "Enough." Lily stared at the paper, a bill for over $40, after 2 hours of impeccable service, of smiles, of water, refilled 1,000 times, of enduring his coldness without a single complaint, 0. And that word, "enough," as if to say, "You've had enough of me. You've received enough. You don't deserve more." Like a written slap, Lily felt the heat rise to her face. It wasn't about the money, though God knew how much she needed every penny that week. It was about the humiliation, about the calculated coldness of that gesture, about the feeling that for that man, she was not a person, but a piece of furniture to be used and discarded. Tears burned her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Not there, not in front of everyone. "How much did he leave you?" Rose asked, peeking out. Lily didn't respond. She just crumpled the receipt in her fist. "Honey, how much?" "Nothing," Lily whispered. "He left me nothing." Rose came closer, took the paper from her hand, and read it. Her face hardened. "Son of a enough. Who does this man think he is? I'm going out there and telling him a thing or two." "No, Rose. Leave it. It's not worth it." "Of course it's worth it. You spent the whole afternoon serving him like a king." "Rose." Lily looked at her with those green eyes, now moist but firm. "If I went out to fight with every customer who treated me badly, I'd never finish. I have a child with a fever waiting for me. I don't have energy for pride, only for survival." And that sentence, said in a low voice, without drama, with the naturalness of someone who had repeated it too many times, was sadder than any crying. Rose hugged her. Lily let herself be hugged for a second, just one, and then pulled away. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and returned to work. Because the shift wasn't over, because life didn't stop, because single mothers don't have the luxury of breaking down in the middle of the afternoon. That night, when she finally got home, she found Max asleep, burning with fever, his breathing wheezing. Mrs. Dubois waited for her with a worried face. The cloths helped a little, but Lily, this isn't normal anymore. This boy needs to see a doctor, a good one, in the city. "I know," Lily said, kneeling by the bed, stroking her son's hot forehead. "I know." She stayed there watching him sleep, listening to that wheezing in his little chest that frightened her so much. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to cry, silently so as not to wake him. Tears of helplessness, of fear, of infinite exhaustion. She took the crumpled receipt from her apron pocket. Zeros. Enough. She looked at it under the yellow light of the lamp. "Enough," she repeated in a whisper. "You don't know what enough is. You have no idea." She was going to tear it up. She was going to shred it and throw it in the trash along with the memory of that cold man, and his world of expensive watches and stone hearts. But something stopped her. That night, exhausted, she left it on the bedside table and fell asleep hugging her son. She didn't know, couldn't have known, that receipt wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. Because the next morning, as she cleared the tables from the previous shift that had been left, Lily would find something else. Something that man had left, something that wasn't a humiliation. It was a folded, hidden, secret note, and what that note said would turn her entire life upside down. The alarm clock rang at 5 a.m., as it did every morning. But Lily was already awake. She had been for hours, sitting on the edge of the bed, listening to Max's breathing. His fever had gone down a little during the night, but the wheezing in the boy's chest wouldn't go away, and every time he coughed, Lily felt as if a hand was squeezing her heart. She touched his forehead with her lips, warm, better than the night before, but not well. Never completely well. "Mommy has to go to work, my love," she whispered. "Mrs. Dubois will take care of you. Be good and take your syrup, okay?" Max barely opened his eyes, those big, dark eyes so much like his father's, and nodded sleepily. "Are you going to bring pie?" he murmured. Lily felt a knot in her throat. The boy adored the diner's pie, and when she could, she saved him a piece of what they were going to throw away. "If there's any left, I'll bring you some, I promise." She tucked him in, kissed him, and got ready in silence. As she tied her hair in front of the broken bathroom mirror, her gaze fell on the bedside table. There was the crumpled receipt from the previous afternoon. Zeros. Enough. For a moment, she felt that pang of humiliation again, but she forced herself to take a deep breath. She didn't have time for anger. She had a shift to work and a debt to pay. She put the receipt in her apron pocket, not quite knowing why, perhaps to remind herself that there were still cruel people in the world. Perhaps simply because she hadn't slept well and wasn't thinking clearly. She went out into the dark, cold street, dropped Max off with Mrs. Dubois, and walked the 8 blocks to the Maple Leaf Diner. The sky was beginning to lighten when she arrived. She opened the door with her key, turned on the lights, and started the coffee maker. The smell of coffee was, as always, the only comforting thing about the morning. Rose arrived shortly after, grumbling about the cold. "How's the boy this morning?" "Better, a little better." "Are you going to take him to the doctor this week?" "As soon as I get paid, Rose, as soon as I get paid." The cook looked at her with that mixture of affection and reproach of older women who have seen too much. "Lily, honey, that 'as soon as I get paid' has been going on for months. Some things can't wait." Lily didn't respond. She took a cloth and began cleaning the tables that had been left from the closing shift the night before, because the cleaning guy hadn't come in. It was just one more task, added to the thousands she already did. She didn't complain. She never complained. It was when she reached the back booth, the same one where the man in the black suit had sat, that it happened. Lily wiped the table, picked up a couple of used napkins, straightened the salt shaker, and as she lifted the small plastic flower vase in the center, she saw something underneath, a piece of paper folded into quarters, carefully hidden under the vase, where no one would find it except someone cleaning that table thoroughly. Lily frowned and picked it up. It was thick, expensive paper, creamy white, very different from the diner's cheap receipts. She unfolded it with clumsy fingers. Inside, written in the same elegant, firm handwriting that had written "enough," it said, "Today's tip wasn't on the receipt. If you have the courage to look for it, come tomorrow, Friday, at 11 a.m. to this address. Ask for AV. What you saw as humiliation was a test. You didn't fail it. Bring the child if you wish. A.V. And below, an address, a downtown city address, in the good part, among the glass buildings." Lily read the note 3 times. 4. Her heart pounded. "What's that?" Rose asked, approaching. "Nothing," Lily said, folding the paper abruptly. "Trash." But Rose, who had hawk eyes, had already caught sight of the handwriting. "That calligraphy," she narrowed her eyes. "It's from yesterday's guy, the enough one. What did he leave? Let me see." Lily hesitated, but she knew Rose. She wouldn't leave her alone. She handed her the note. Rose read it, moving her lips. When she finished, she looked up, alarmed. "Lily, no, don't even think about it. I'm not going, Rose. Of course not. A man you don't know, who humiliates you with a piece of paper, who leaves you a hidden note like a stalker and asks you to go to an address and bring the child. For God's sake, honey, what world do you live in? This smells bad. It smells like danger. I know. I'm not going. These things end up on the news. women disappearing, human trafficking, anything. I'm not going, Rose. Lily repeated, taking the note from her hands, crumpling it, and putting it back in her apron pocket. Happy? Rose looked at her, not entirely convinced. Burn it. That's the best thing you can do with that. Lily nodded, but she didn't burn it. The day passed like all others, long, tiring, full of aching feet and heavy dishes, but something had changed. Every time she put her hand in her pocket and brushed against the folded paper, a question hammered at her head. Today's tip wasn't on the receipt. What did that mean? What kind of test? And why her? Why would a man like that, with a $10,000 watch and a suit that cost more than her year's rent, bother to leave a hidden note for a simple waitress? It was a test. You didn't fail it. Lily didn't understand. And what we don't understand sometimes attracts us more than it frightens us. Mid-afternoon, during a break, she took out the note and read it again. The address, the Glass District. Ask for AV. She took out her phone and looked up the address. On the map, a building appeared. A huge, mirrored one with a name engraved on the entrance. Vance Corporation. Vance Corporate. Read the building's review. Alexander Vance, one of the country's most powerful businessmen, owner of hotels, construction companies, half the port. A man whose photo appeared in business magazines with headlines like The Ice Mogul or Canada's Most Eligible Bachelor. Lily stared at the photo. It was him, without a doubt. The same sharp face, the same tense jaw, the same eyes that for a second had paused on hers. The man who had left her $0 tip and the word enough was one of the richest men in the country. Lily felt dizzy. She leaned her back against the kitchen wall. Are you all right, honey? Rose asked. Yes, just tired. But it wasn't tiredness. It was the vertigo of something too big, too strange, too far outside her world of patched uniforms and hospital debts. Why would a man like Alexander Vance take an interest in her? What test? What did he want? The possibilities swirled in her head, and almost all of them were grim. Rose's warnings echoed. Rich men, poor women, things that end up on the news. Lily wasn't naive. She knew how the world worked. She knew what certain men with money thought they could buy. And still, there was one sentence she couldn't get out of her head. Not the one about the test. Another. Bring the child if you wish. How did he know about Max? She had never mentioned her son. Never. Then she remembered Mrs. Dubois' message, her face breaking for an instant behind the counter, her held breath. He had been watching her. He had seen everything. He had understood that this woman who smiled tirelessly silently carried the burden of a sick child, and that a stranger had seen through her mask scared her more than anything else, because Lily had built her entire life around not letting anyone see her pain, and that man had seen it at first glance. That night, she arrived home more confused than tired. Max still had a wheezing in his chest, but the fever had subsided. She gave him his syrup, told him a story, put him to sleep, and then sat at the kitchen table under the yellow light with the unfolded note in front of her. She made a decision. I'm not going, she said aloud, as if to convince herself. It's crazy. I have everything to lose and nothing to gain. She brought the note closer to the stove flame. She was going to burn it, as Rose had said. But then she looked towards the small room where Max was sleeping. She heard in the night silence that faint wheezing in her son's chest, that sound that reminded her every day that time was running out, that the money she needed wouldn't appear by magic, that every week that passed without treatment was a week her child would never regain, and the hand holding the note over the flame trembled. Today's tip wasn't on the receipt. What if it wasn't a trap? What if it was an opportunity? Perhaps the only one life would ever offer her. She pulled the paper away from the fire, folded it again, and put it away. She wouldn't sleep that night. She knew it. She would toss and turn, torn between Rose's fear and a mother's desperation, between common sense that screamed, "Don't go," and the small, stubborn voice that whispered, "What if?" At 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, listening to her son's wheezing breath in the next room, Lily made the decision that would change her life forever. She would go. She would go to that address. At 11 a.m., to the glass building, to ask for AV, not out of curiosity, not for the money, though God knew how much she needed it. She would go because she was a mother. And a mother, when her child is slowly drowning and she has no way to save him, is capable of crossing into hell itself if there is a single possibility, just one, of finding salvation on the other side. I'm just going to listen to what he has to say, she promised herself in a whisper. Nothing more. I'll listen, and if it smells bad, I'll take Max back to Mrs. Dubois. I won't take any risks with him. She closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she would face the man who had humiliated her. Tomorrow, she would discover what lay behind that zero and that cruel word. Tomorrow, unknowingly, she would take the first step towards a destiny she could never, not even in her wildest dreams, have imagined. But that is another part of the story. At 11:15 a.m. on Friday, Lily stood on the sidewalk in front of the Vance Corporation's glass building, her heart pounding in her chest. She hadn't brought Max. That had been her single, non-negotiable condition with herself. Whatever happened, her son would remain safe at Mrs. Dubois'. If this was a trap, she would face it alone. She had put on her only decent dress, a faded blue one she reserved for the few important occasions in her life. In front of the building, surrounded by men and women with briefcases, expensive heels, and impeccable suits, she felt more out of place than ever. People glanced at her. A poor waitress in Millionaire territory, she was about to turn back. 3 times she took a step towards the street. 3 times she pulled it back. "I'll just listen to what he has to say," she repeated to herself. Nothing more, and she went in. The lobby was enormous, with white marble and towering ceilings, a glass reception desk, and a security guard who looked at her as one looks at someone who doesn't belong. "How may I help you?" the receptionist asked politely but distantly. "I'm here to..." Lily swallowed. "I'm here to see Mr. Vance, AV. I have an 11 o'clock appointment." The receptionist raised an eyebrow, clearly incredulous, and checked her screen. Her expression suddenly changed. "Lily Morrison?" "Yes? They're expecting you. 40th floor. Mr. Vance will see you in his office. Please escort her," she said to an assistant who appeared out of nowhere. Lily felt her legs weaken. They were expecting her. Her name was in the system. That man had, in fact, planned all of this. The elevator ascended in silence, dizzyingly, showing the city shrinking through the glass. 40 floors. Lily had never been so high in her life. Down below, somewhere, was her neighborhood, her diner, her entire world, tiny. The doors opened to an office that seemed straight out of a movie, an entire wall of windows, a view that encompassed the entire city, designer, furniture, a solid oak table, bookshelves with leather-bound books, and standing by the window, with his back to her, hands in his pockets, was him. "You came," he said without turning. "I confess I wasn't sure you would." Lily didn't respond. Her throat was dry. Alexander turned. He wore another impeccable suit, gray this time. His face was still the same, sharp, serious, with that coldness that seemed carved in stone. But his eyes, when they saw her, held something different, an attention he hadn't had at the diner. "Please, have a seat. I prefer to stand," Lily said, surprised by her own firmness. "I don't plan on staying long." Alexander observed her for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, a shadow of something akin to a smile crossed his face. "As you wish." There was a tense silence. Lily decided to break it. If she had come all this way, it would be to say what she felt inside. "I don't know what kind of game this is," she began, taking the crumpled receipt and the folded note from her bag. She placed them on the oak table with a dry thud. "But I want you to know what I think. You came into my workplace. I served you for 2 hours with respect, with kindness, as I serve everyone. And you left me this," she pointed to the receipt. "Zeros. Do you know what that is for a woman like me? Do you know what $0 for a tip means when you have a sick child and a debt that never ends?" Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. "You humiliated me in front of my colleagues with all the coldness in the world. And then, as if that weren't enough, you leave me a hidden note under a flower vase like a coward, talking about tests and secret tips. Well, here I am. I came. What do you want from me? Say it already, because I have a child waiting for me, and I don't have time for the games of rich, bored men." She finished almost out of breath. Her heart pounded in her chest. She had just spoken like that to one of the most powerful men in the country. She would probably be thrown out in seconds. But Alexander didn't get angry. On the contrary, he looked at her with an expression Lily couldn't decipher. Respect, perhaps admiration, even. "You have character," he said softly. "I suspected it. Don't patronize me. I'm not." Alexander walked around the table and approached, though maintaining a prudent distance. "Lily, what I'm about to tell you will seem strange, perhaps offensive. I ask you to listen to me completely before judging me. Can you do that, Lily?" She crossed her arms. "Speak." Alexander took a deep breath. For the first time, his coldness cracked slightly, revealing something tired, something wounded underneath. The tip of 0 wasn't an insult. It was a test, a deliberate test. A test of what? Of your character. He walked towards the window. "Do you know how many people surround me every day, Miss Morrison? Hundreds. Employees. partners, supposed friends. And do you know what they all have in common? They are kind to me out of self-interest. They smile at me because I have money. They flatter me because it benefits them. I've lived so many years surrounded by masks that I no longer remember what a sincere person's face looks like. He turned to her. A week ago, I decided to do an experiment. I started going to places where no one knows who I am. Modest restaurants, neighborhood coffee shops. And there, I behave like the worst of customers. Cold, dry, demanding. And in the end, I leave a 0 tip and a cruel word. I want to see how people react when they believe they won't get anything from me. When they discover that the difficult customer is also a cheapskate. Lily was beginning to understand. And what reactions do you get? Insults, almost always. One waitress chased me out into the street, screaming at me. A waiter spat in my coffee, he said with a grimace. Others stopped talking to me, served me grudgingly, treated me with contempt, as soon as they sensed there would be no reward. And I understand them. I deserve it in a way. And me? Lily asked. Alexander looked at her intently. You didn't. You treated me with the same kindness from beginning to end. When you picked up that receipt, when you saw the 0 and the enough, your colleague wanted to go out and fight me. I heard her, and you stopped her. Do you remember what you said? Lily remembered every word. I said I didn't have energy for pride, only for survival. Exactly. Alexander's voice softened. In the midst of humiliation, with a sick child waiting for you, without a penny. You chose dignity over anger. You didn't insult me. You didn't chase me. You didn't break down in front of others. You simply continued to be yourself. That, Lily, is something money cannot buy. And it is exactly what I have been looking for years, without finding it. Lily didn't know what to say. All the anger she had brought with her began to waver. I know, and I'm not ready to tell you everything yet. Alexander took the receipt from the table, looked at it, and then took an envelope from a drawer. But first, let me correct my mistake. This is the true tip your service deserved that afternoon. He extended the envelope to her. Lily didn't take it. I don't want your money. It's not charity. It's what you honestly earned. We'll talk about the rest later. I said I don't want your money, Lily repeated, stepping back. I didn't come for that. I came because… She stopped, because the truth was too painful to say aloud. I came because my son is slowly dying, and you were my only crazy hope. I came to understand, and I have understood. You are a lonely, wounded man who plays with people to see if anyone is real. Well, congratulations. You found someone real. A poor woman, a single mother, a nobody. And now what? Do you feel better? The words fell like stones, and for the first time, Alexander Vance, the ice mogul, Canada's most eligible bachelor, lowered his gaze. No, he said in a very low voice. I don't feel better. I feel ashamed. The silence that followed was long and heavy. Lily looked at him, and for an instant, behind the grey suit and the 40 stories high and the unimaginable fortune, she saw a man, just a man, as broken in his own way as she was. She picked up the note from the table. I'm leaving, she said. I'm giving this back to you. I don't need reminders of that afternoon. Lily. She stopped at the door. Your son. Alexander's voice was different now, almost vulnerable. What's wrong with him? Lily squeezed the note in her fist. Something in his chest. He breathes poorly. He needs a specialist. Tests. Treatment I can't afford. Why do you care? Alexander took a moment to respond. Because there was a time, he said at last, when I, too, was a poor child with a father who couldn't afford a doctor, and I know exactly the sound a mother's fear makes when she thinks she's going to lose her child. Lily froze. That confession didn't fit with anything she had imagined about that man, but she wasn't ready to believe him. Not yet. Goodbye, Mr. Vance, she said, and left the office. In the elevator, as the city grew before her eyes again, Lily realized she was trembling, and that against all logic, against all of Rose's warnings, against all her common sense, a part of her didn't want to leave. But what Lily didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that upstairs, on the 40th floor, Alexander Vance had stood looking at the door through which she had left for a long time, and that for the first time in many years, something inside that Iceman had begun very slowly to melt. Nor did she know that this encounter would not be the last, by far. 3 days passed without news. Lily returned to her routine as if nothing had happened. Double shifts, swollen feet, 5 a.m. coffee, the wheezing in Max's chest that wasn't improving. She told Rose everything about the encounter. She couldn't keep it to herself. The cook made the sign of the cross 3 times. See? A crazy man. A bored millionaire playing with people like they're little mice. You did well to tell him to take a hike, honey. Those people are not to be trusted. I don't know. Rose. In the end, he didn't seem crazy. He seemed like a sad man. Sad men with money are the most dangerous of all. Stay away. Lily nodded. She had every intention of staying away. The problem was that she couldn't stop thinking about what he had said. I, too, was a poor child with a father who couldn't afford a doctor. Those words didn't fit a man like Alexander Vance, and yet, when he said them, there wasn't a hint of pretense in his voice. On the fourth day, a gleaming black car pulled up in front of the diner. All the customers turned to look. Those kinds of cars didn't usually drop off customers at the Maple Leaf Diner, but from the back seat, Alexander Vance indeed emerged, in his impeccable suit and otherworldly air. Rose, from the kitchen, muttered a curse. Alexander entered, the chime rang, and he sat down, of course, in the same back booth. He waited. Lily, behind the counter, felt all the blood rush to her face. For a moment, she thought of asking another colleague to serve him, but no, if Lily was anything, she was brave. She approached with the menu. "I thought you were done playing with me," she said in a low voice so only he could hear her. "I didn't come to play. I came to talk, for real this time. No tests, no tricks." Alexander looked at her. "Can you give me 10 minutes when your shift ends? I'll wait for you outside. If you don't come out, I'll understand, and I'll never bother you again. You have my word." Lily looked at him for a long time, then nodded barely. "I finish at 4. At 4:10, Lily left the diner. The black car was still there. Alexander was standing, leaning against it, no chauffeur in sight. He opened the passenger door for her. "Do you mind if we drive a bit? There's a place I want to take you. It's not far, and it's not dangerous, I promise. You can text your friend the license plate, if that makes you feel better." Lily, who had already noted the license plate and sent it to Rose with instructions to call the police if she didn't hear from her in 2 hours, got into the car. They drove in silence for a while. They left the city towards the outskirts, towards a humble, old neighborhood that Lily hadn't expected. Small houses, cracked streets, clotheslines strung between windows. Alexander stopped the car in front of a modest little house with faded paint. "I was born here," he said. "I grew up here." Lily looked at him, astonished. "My father was a laborer. My mother washed other people's clothes. We were poor, Lily. Truly poor. The kind who count coins for bread." Alexander looked at the house, his eyes lost in another time. "When I was 8 years old, my little sister, Anna, fell ill with a heart condition. She needed an operation. My parents knocked on every door, borrowed, pleaded, humbled themselves before anyone with money. No one helped, no one. The rich people in town looked at us as you imagined. I looked at you, with contempt, like trash." He paused. It was difficult for him. Anna died. She was 6 years old, the same age Max is now. Lily felt the air freeze in her lungs. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "My father never recovered. He died a few years later. They said it was his heart, but I know it was from grief." Alexander clenched his jaw. "I swore 2 things that day by my sister's grave. The first, that I would never again be poor, and I kept that promise. I worked like an animal, studied on scholarship, started businesses, won, lost, won again. By 35, I was one of the richest men in the country. And the second promise?" Alexander took a moment to answer, "that when I had the money, I would help. That no poor child would have to die as my sister died because they couldn't afford a doctor." He lowered his head. "But do you know what happened, Lily? Money changed me slowly, without me realizing it. I surrounded myself with false people, flatterers, women who only wanted my fortune. I became distrustful, cold, hard. I forgot where I came from. I forgot my second promise. For years, I only fulfilled the first. To get rich and protect myself from everyone." He turned to her. "Until one day, recently, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. I saw a bitter, lonely man with no one real by his side. And I asked myself, is this what you've become? One of those rich people who despised your family? That's when I started the tests. Those cruel tests, I admit. I wanted to find someone who was still real. Someone who would remind me that kindness exists. I needed to find them, to believe again, and to finally start fulfilling my second promise." Lily's eyes were filled with tears. "And you found me. I found you." Alexander looked at her with a new intensity. A mother who, in the midst of hell, did not lose her dignity or her tenderness. Who stopped her friend from insulting me. Who chose to survive, with her head held high. "Lily, you are everything my family was, and everything the world despised. And I won't allow your son to suffer the same fate as my sister, not while I have the means to prevent it. The silence in the car was dense, charged with emotion. "I can't accept your money," Lily said at last, her voice breaking. "Not out of pride, but out of fear. Because people don't give away fortunes without asking for something in return. And I have nothing to give, and I don't want to owe anyone what I love most in this world. I'm not asking for anything in return. Everyone asks for something, Mr. Vance, sooner or later." Alexander looked at her and then said something Lily didn't expect. "You're right to be distrustful. If I were you, I would also be distrustful. So I'm not asking you to accept anything today. I'm just asking you to let a doctor, a good doctor, see Max without obligation, without debt, just a consultation. If after that you want to disappear from my life, I will respect it, but at least we will know what's wrong with your son and what he needs. Does that seem fair to you?" Can a mother deny her child a medical consultation out of pride? And there it was, the accurate blow, because he was right. Lily could reject the money, she could reject him, but she could not as a mother, deny Max the possibility of a real doctor examining him. "A consultation," she said, "only that, and I'll pay what I can, even in installments. A consultation without debt. Tomorrow if you wish." Lily nodded, defeated by the only cause worth being defeated for, her son. What neither of them saw while talking inside the car was the other vehicle that passed slowly down the street, a red sports car driven by a woman with dark hair and dark glasses who immediately recognized the magnate. Rebecca, Alexander's ex-wife, the woman who years ago had betrayed him with his partner, who had kept a portion of his fortune in the divorce, and who had never fully accepted losing the richest man she had ever had in her hands. Rebecca slowed down, looked inside the black car, saw Alexander, and next to him, a humble woman in a faded dress, talking to him with an intimacy that churned her stomach. "And who is this?" she murmured, narrowing her eyes behind her glasses. "A waitress. Seriously, Alexander." She took out her phone, snapped a photo. "Let's find out who you are, darling, and let's make sure you don't get 1 inch closer to what's mine." The red car sped up and disappeared down the street. Lily, oblivious to everything, looked at Alexander and felt for the first time in years something dangerously close to hope. She didn't know that at that very moment, she had just gained an enemy, and that enemy would stop at nothing. The consultation changed everything. The next morning, a car picked up Lily and Max. The boy, who had never been in such an elegant car, had his nose pressed against the window, marveling, for a while forgetting the cough that plagued him. Lily squeezed his hand. She was scared, not of the doctor, but of what the doctor might say. They were taken to a private clinic that was nothing like the crowded public hospitals Lily was used to. Here there were no lines, no broken chairs, no 6-hour waits. Here they were personally greeted by Dr. Hamilton, one of the country's best pediatric pulmonologists, she was told. Alexander wasn't there. He had promised. No debt, no pressure, just a consultation, but he had arranged everything. Dr. Hamilton examined Max with a patience and delicacy that moved Lily. He ran tests, x-rays, listened to him breathe for a long time, tickled him to make him laugh and cough again. The boy, delighted with so much attention, behaved like a champion. When he finished, the doctor called Lily into his office. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm going to be frank because I believe you're the kind who prefers the truth. Always," Lily said, her heart in her throat. "Your son has a chronic bronchial condition aggravated by the lack of adequate treatment over time. The good news is that it is treatable. The bad news is that it is a prolonged treatment, specific medication, respiratory therapy, regular checkups, and probably a change of environment away from humidity and dust. With that, in 1 or 2 years, Max can lead a completely normal life. Run, play, everything." Lily felt tears well up without permission. "And without treatment?" The doctor looked at her seriously. "Without treatment, the condition worsens. Each crisis damages the lungs a little more. Over time, I don't want to alarm you, but it's not something that can be ignored. That wheezing you hear at night is a warning." Lily closed her eyes, hope and terror mixed. "How much does the treatment cost?" The doctor told her a figure. Lily felt the floor open beneath her. It was an amount that she, earning what she earned, couldn't gather in 10 years of work. 10 years Max didn't have. She left the clinic with her child's hand in hers and a sentence in her soul. Her son could be cured, he could be cured, and she couldn't afford it. It was the worst of tortures, knowing that salvation existed and was beyond her reach. That afternoon Alexander called her. Lily didn't want to talk, but she answered. "How was the consultation?" he asked. "He has treatment," Lily said, and her voice broke. "My son can be cured. Only..." A knot formed in her throat. only I can't afford it. So it's like not having it. Do you know what that's like, Mr. Vance? Knowing your son can heal and being unable to do anything. It's hell. It's absolute hell. There was a silence on the other end of the line. Lily, he said at last, come to my office tomorrow, please. I have a proposal, and this time it's not a test or a game. It's something serious. Listen to me, and if you say no, I'll accept it. But please, listen to me. Lily should have said no, but a mother whose child can be cured doesn't say no to anything. The next day, she returned to the glass building. This time, she was greeted with respect. She went up to the 40th floor. Alexander was waiting for her, and this time he wasn't alone. Next to him was an older man with a serious demeanor, holding a folder of documents. Lily, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Sterling, my lawyer. I want him to be present, so you can see that everything I'm about to propose is legal, transparent, and in writing, with no tricks. Lily sat down, distrustful. I'm listening. Alexander took a deep breath. I'm offering you a job, a real one, with a contract, a salary, and benefits. He slid a document across the table. I need an administrator for a foundation I'm going to create. A foundation dedicated to paying for medical treatments for underprivileged children. The promise I told you about, remember? The one I made to my sister? I'm finally going to fulfill it. And I need someone at the helm who truly understands poverty, who hasn't seen it from behind a desk, who has lived it. Someone with heart, with honesty, with good judgment. I want you. Lily blinked in disbelief. I'm a waitress. I don't know how to administer a foundation. I didn't finish school. I have no idea how to. You have the one thing that can't be learned in university. You know what it feels like. The rest can be taught. You'll receive training. You'll have a team. Alexander looked at her. The salary is this. He pointed to a figure in the contract. Lily looked at it. It was more than she earned in a year, per month. And as the foundation's first beneficiary, Alexander continued, your son, Max's treatment covered 100%, starting tomorrow, not as a gift, but as part of the foundation's mission. No child should die for lack of money. Max is exactly the kind of child we're going to help. Mr. Sterling intervened in a calm voice. Madam, I have personally reviewed everything. The contract is completely legal. You don't incur a debt. You don't owe anything. It's an employment with a salary and medical benefits that cover your son like any employee. There's no fine print, no hidden conditions. You can take it, show it to another lawyer of your trust, take all the time you need. Lily looked at the contract without really seeing it. Her head was spinning. It was too good, too perfect, and for that very reason, it was frightening. Why? She asked, looking Alexander in the eyes. Tell me the truth. Why me? There are thousands of more qualified people. Why this waitress? What do you really want from me? And don't tell me it's because of my heart. Men don't give fortunes to women because of their heart. Alexander met her gaze, and for the first time, instead of responding with speeches, he was completely sincere. Because ever since I saw you in that diner, I haven't stopped thinking about you. He said it softly, and it was clear it was difficult for him. Not just for your kindness, for everything, for your strength, for your eyes, for the way you carry the whole world without breaking. I won't lie to you. Lily, you matter to me more than a woman I've just met should matter, and I know this complicates everything. I know you're now going to think the job is an excuse to keep you close, and perhaps in part it is. That's why I brought the lawyer. That's why I put everything in writing. So you know that whether you accept my feelings or not, the job and your son's treatment are yours, without conditions, without you having to give me anything in return, not even a smile if you don't want to. The silence was absolute. Lily felt 1,000 things at once. Confusion, fear, a dangerous emotion she didn't dare name, and above all, the image of Max, healthy, running, laughing, breathing, without that terrifying wheeze. I need to think about it, she said, her voice trembling. I can't decide something like this now. It's too much. Take all the time you need, Alexander said. But time decided for her that very night. Lily arrived home and found Mrs. Dubois pale at the door. Lily, thank God. Max got very bad. He couldn't breathe. I called an ambulance. It's on its way. Lily's world stopped. She ran inside. Max was in bed, his lips blue, fighting for every breath, his little chest rising and falling with desperate effort. The wheezing had turned into a horrible, choked sound. My love, Max, Mommy's here. Mommy's here. The ambulance was taking too long. The neighborhood was far from everything. Lily, hands trembling, took out her phone and, without a second thought, dialed the only number that could save her son at that instant. Alexander, she said, and for the first time, she called him by his name. My son can't breathe. The ambulance isn't here. Please, help me. Help me. I beg you. Where are you? Alexander's voice was immediate, urgent. Give me the address. Don't hang up. I'm on my way. I'm calling the clinic right now. Hold on. Lily, hold on. You're not alone. And as Lily held her son in her arms, praying, pleading, she felt the decision was already made. Not because of contracts, not because of money, but because in the worst moment of her life, there was only one person in the world who answered. Alexander arrived before the ambulance. His car screeched to a halt in front of the small house, and he jumped out, jacketless, tie crooked, unrecognizable to anyone who knew the cold ice mogul. Behind him came a second vehicle, Dr. Hamilton in person, with an emergency bag, alerted by Alexander himself. Here, he's inside, Lily cried. The doctor entered, assessed Max in seconds, placed an oxygen mask on him, and administered medication that gradually eased that terrible struggle to breathe. Color slowly returned to the boy's face. The wheezing softened. Max opened his eyes, scared, but alive. We've stabilized him, the doctor said, but we need to take him to the clinic now. He needs observation, and to start treatment immediately. We can't wait any longer. Whatever it takes, Alexander said without hesitation. Whatever it takes. Max was transferred to the private clinic. That night, Lily spent it entirely by her son's bedside, holding his little hand, while the machines beeped softly and the oxygen did its work. Alexander also stayed, sitting in a chair in the hallway, without leaving, without asking for anything, simply being there. Towards dawn, Max slept peacefully for the first time in months. No wheezing, breathing deeply and clearly. Lily stepped out into the hallway. Alexander stood up when he saw her. How is he? Asleep, breathing well. The doctor says he started treatment and he's going to recover. Lily's eyes filled with tears. He's going to have a normal life. And then, without thinking, without calculating, Lily did something she never would have imagined. She hugged Alexander Vance, hugged him tightly, with the full weight of fear and relief and gratitude. And he, the man who couldn't remember the last time someone had truly hugged him, wrapped his arms around her and held her. Thank you, Lily whispered against his chest. You saved my son. Thank you. You don't have to thank me, he murmured. This is what money is for, Lily. This is what it should always have been for. That morning, Lily signed the contract, not for the salary, not out of fear. She signed it because she had understood that that man was real, that behind the ice there was a heart that had suffered as much as hers, and because her son was finally going to live. The following weeks were, for a time, almost a dream. Max improved day by day. The treatment, now uninterrupted, worked its slow but sure miracle. The terrifying wheezing that had accompanied Lily's nights for years disappeared, never to return. The boy grew strong, healthy, noisy, mischievous, full of the energy that the illness had stolen from him. He ran through the mansion's garden, chasing butterflies, climbed trees, shouted, laughed heartily. Each of those laughs was, for Lily, a victory that no money in the world could buy. Look, Mom, look how fast I run, the boy would shout. And Lily would watch him from the porch, her eyes filled with happy tears, remembering the days when that same little one could barely breathe. Rebecca, on the other hand, paid for everything she had done. The judicial investigation moved relentlessly. The bribes, the defamation, the false complaint to the Children's Aid Society, the attempt to fraudulently obtain a minor's medical history. Everything came to light. Frank, to save himself, testified against her in vivid detail. Rebecca lost her contacts, her reputation, her invitations to the elegant dinners where she once reigned. The very people who had flattered her now turned their backs. She ended up alone, bitter, exiled from the only world that mattered to her, appearances. Frank, for his part, was branded a traitor and opportunist, despised even by those who had used him. Divine justice, that which is slow but never forgets, had done its work. The foundation, meanwhile, flourished. Under Lily's direction, in its first year, it helped over 200 underprivileged children receive life-saving treatments. Lily, the former diner waitress, was respected not for Alexander's money, but for her dedication. She visited hospitals, spoke with desperate families, took their hands, and told them the words no one had said to her in her worst moments. You are not alone. We are going to help you. Your child is going to live. And every time she said it, she honored the memory of her father, Thomas Morrison, the poor man who had given everything for a friend. Rose, the old cook, was appointed by Lily as her right-hand woman in the foundation, in charge of receiving and comforting families. All my years of scolding people have to be good for something, the old woman joked, though deep down she was beaming with pride for the girl she had seen humiliated and now saw shine. And between Alexander and Lily, the love that had been born of destiny became definitive. One afternoon, in the same garden where Max chased butterflies, Alexander knelt before her, not with an ostentatious millionaire's ring, but with something far more valuable, the two maple leaf medallions, united, hanging from a single chain. "Lily," he said, his voice trembling, he who never trembled, "our fathers promised that true friendship always finds its way home. I want to make you a different promise. I want you to be my home. You and Max, forever. Will you marry me?" Lily, crying and laughing, could only nod while Max, who had only understood the gist, shouted from the tree, "Say yes, Mom. Then Alexander can be my dad." And Lily said yes. The wedding was not the media event many expected from the ice mogul. It was, by mutual choice, a simple, luminous ceremony held in a garden, surrounded only by the people who truly mattered. Rose cried buckets. Mrs. Dubois, the neighbor who had so often cared for Max, was a bridesmaid. Dr. Hamilton attended as a dear family friend, and Max, proudly dressed in a small suit, carried the rings down the aisle, with a solemnity that brought tears and laughter to everyone. Lily walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, and on her chest were the two twin maple leaf medallions. Her father wasn't there in body, but he was in every step, in every tear, in the reunion of a 40-year-old promise. "Today a circle closes," Alexander said in his vows. "Your father saved my family when we had nothing, and you, unknowingly, saved what was left of me, my heart that had been dead for years. I promise before everyone that you will never lack anything, not money, not respect, not love, above all, love. I didn't come into your life looking for your fortune," Lily replied in hers. "I arrived humiliated with $0 for a tip and the word enough written like an insult. And look at me now. It turns out, it was enough. It was you. It was always you. Life took so much from me for so long that I stopped believing in happy endings. Today, I believe again." They married under a clear sky as guests applauded and Max jumped for joy. 2 years later, the mansion's garden was bustling with life one sunny morning. Max, now 8 years old, completely healthy, played soccer with a group of friends, shouting and laughing. And in the shade of the great maple tree Alexander had planted on their wedding day, "So it grows with our family," he had said. Lily gently rocked a stroller. Inside, a few months-old baby slept. She had her mother's green eyes and her father's strong character. They had named her Hope, because that was what that child represented. Hope that never dies, not even on the longest nights. Proof that after the cruelest winter, spring always, always returns. Alexander came out of the house with 2 cups of coffee and sat next to his wife. Nothing of the ice mogul remained. That cold, lonely man had disappeared, replaced by a father and husband who smiled easily, who played with his children on the floor, who had finally learned what all his money was truly for. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, handing her a cup. Lily gazed at Max running, at little Hope sleeping, the maple tree swaying in the breeze. "I'm thinking about that afternoon at the diner," she said, smiling, "about that cold customer who left me a 0 tip. You know, that was, without my knowing it, the best tip of my entire life." Alexander laughed and took her hand. On their fingers, 2 wedding bands. On her chest, still the 2 maple leaf medallions. "Your father was right," he said. "True friendship always finds its way home. And look," she said, "it came back. It came back through you, through all of us." Lily rested her head on his shoulder. The sun cast a golden glow over the garden, over the children, over the family that destiny, kindness, and a 40-year-old promise had woven against all odds. And as she watched that scene, which in her days of poverty and humiliation she would never have dared to dream of, Lily thought of all the women who, like her, one day serve tables with swollen feet and broken hearts, who silently endure contempt, who raise their children alone with no weapon other than their dignity. And she wanted to say something to all of them. Never, ever let someone's scorn define your worth. No matter how low the world makes you feel, how many zeros they write, how many times they tell you that you don't belong, that you don't deserve, that you've had enough. Your dignity is not in what others think of you, but in how you choose to behave when no one is watching, when nothing seems to make sense, when the easiest thing would be to give up or strike back. Because kindness, though delayed, always pays off, and dignity, though costly, never betrays those who preserve it. Lily learned it from her father, and her father, a man who died as poor as he lived, was in the end the richest of all. Because his kindness, sown 40 years ago in the heart of a child named Alexander, returned multiplied to save his daughter and his grandson. That was the true fortune, the only one that is never lost. Under the maple tree, as the children laughed and the coffee steamed, Lily and Alexander looked at each other, and in that gaze was everything. The pain overcome, the love found, justice served, the promise honored. The humiliated waitress and the millionaire with a broken heart had found in each other the home they had both lost, and they finally lived in peace. Because sometimes the cruelest zeros in life hide, without our knowing it, the beginning of the most beautiful story. The end.